Today we're diving into one of the most legendary compressors in recording history, the 1176, of course. Specifically, we're taking a close look at the Rev A, Rev D, and Rev F versions, and what makes each of them so unique. We're going to explore their history, go deep into their circuits, and look at how each design affects the sound. Plus, stick around to the end. I'm going to share some audio examples. We're actually going to run audio through each of those three compressors, and you'll get to hear how each one compares. So let's start with some history. The 1176 was first introduced by Bill Putnam Sr. in 1967. At the time, he was operating under his company United Recording Electronics Industries, which was a parent company of Universal Audio, created to purchase equipment technology companies like Teletronics, for example. He'd recently designed the 175 and 176 tube compressors and wanted to create something similar that would use a FET-based circuit rather than tubes. This made the 1176 the first of its kind. The FET gain reduction circuit gave it a fast response and that punchy, unmistakable sound that we all know and love. The Rev A, known as the Blue Stripe, was the very first 1176. It's famous for its aggressive, colorful sound, and that's thanks to a combination of design choices that gave it a unique, gritty character. The Rev A uses what's called a Class A output stage. Unlike Class AB, where two transistors handle positive and negative halves of a signal separately, Class A has one transistor amplify the entire waveform. The result is a warmer, fuller tone that's often described as vintage or rich. It's a big part of what gives the Rev A its classic thick sound. Next, the Rev A has transformer-coupled input and output stages. Transformers saturate when you push them, adding a touch of harmonic distortion, which can give signals more body and warmth. So even with minimal compression, the Rev A adds some analog glue to a track. In fact, that's one of the cool things about the AudioScape versions. If you turn the attack all the way to the left, to the off position, it actually bypasses the gain reduction circuit altogether, and you can just run over the transformers and use the unit as a saturation box, which is really handy. Anyway, the biggest part of any 1176 is the FET-based gain reduction. FETs are fast and responsive, but they also add a bit of harmonic distortion themselves, especially just like transformers when driven hard. This FET distortion, combined with the Class A output and transformers, give the Rev A a gritty, punchy quality. The Rev A is known in particular for its aggressive mid-range presence, which can make vocals and guitars really pop in a mix. It adds a warm, saturated tone that just sounds vintage, with lots of harmonic richness that thickens up a sound. If you're looking for character and vibe, the Rev A is the one. Now before we get to the Rev D and F, let's briefly cover a few intermediate revisions, B, C, and E. Each of these was a step in the 1176's evolution, although they didn't make as big of an impact as the Rev A, D, or F. Rev B mostly refined the design and fixed a few issues from the original without changing the sound significantly. Rev C introduced the blackface design, which is, as far as I know, the only acceptable use of the word blackface, but its functionality was very similar to Rev A and B, with just a bit more stability. Most of the revisions to the 1176 design are upgraded components as technology improved, and some made much less of an impact to the overall tone than others. Rev D was the next big revision, adding a low noise circuitry, which we'll get to in a second. Then Rev E came next, keeping that low noise circuitry of the D, but using a different output amplifier. It sits somewhere between the warmth of the Rev D and the clarity of the Rev F. AudioScape chose to focus on the A, D, and F because they each bring unique sonic traits, while B, C, and E were closer to evolutionary steps rather than distinct sonic breakthroughs. So we covered Rev A, and we talked about why B and C weren't very significant in comparison. The Rev D, also known as the Blackface 1176, came out with some pretty big improvements. The biggest being the low noise or LN circuit. This circuit was really effective at reducing background hiss, making it the first 1176 to offer a cleaner, quieter output. So how did they lower the noise in the LN model? Well, when it comes to reducing noise in audio, there's very rarely a silver bullet, and that is the case here. It was the culmination of several different things. One, they used precisely matched transistors that would play well with one another, and they also optimized the circuit layout to minimize interference. Basically, when certain electronic components are close to one another, they can create interference, i.e. noise. So by designing the circuit boards to separate those nitpicky components, it was an easy way to get cleaner audio. With less noise, you get a more transparent, smooth sound. The Rev D still adds some of that harmonic distortion, but in a more controlled way. This is the revision that kind of became the studio standard, and it's largely because the LN circuit makes it more adaptable without losing any of the 1176's character. In a sense, it's just more versatile and you can use it on more things. Finally, we get to the Rev F, which brought about a really big change, the push-pull Class AB output stage. If you're wondering what a push-pull circuit is, let's break it down. In a push-pull output stage, the audio signal after the gain reduction is split into positive and negative halves. Each half is amplified separately by two transistors, then combined at the output. This improves the design in a few ways. One, it makes the circuit more efficient. Instead of passing through one transistor, the split is carried across two of them, reducing the load on the single transistor. Two, whenever you split an audio signal into a positive and negative half, run them in parallel to each other like that, it can actually cancel out certain types of harmonic distortion, particularly even order harmonics. This gives the Rev F a cleaner, more transparent sound. In a nutshell, it gives you higher output and lower noise. It's faster, it's more stable, which gives that Rev F that tight sound that makes it perfect for sources like drums. It also delivers a bit more punch and clarity in the low end, making it more powerful without adding extra coloration. In practical terms, the Rev F has a punchy, clear low end and a focused, aggressive response that's great for dynamic sources. It's a bit less colored than the Rev A, making it ideal for situations where you want clarity, but with fast, controlled compression. Okay, in just a minute, I'm going to show you some audio examples through each of the three AudioScape 1176 revisions. But first, some quick notes. One, the differences between these compressors is actually fairly subtle, so you should keep that in mind. Remember, at the end of the day, they're all 1176s, and that FET-based gain reduction is giving it most of its sound. You'll notice that the knobs are set a bit differently on each one. AudioScape have gone to great pains to replicate the original circuits in these units to the letter. And part of that is seemingly insignificant things like the PCB ratios, aka the PCB where the ratio buttons live, which was changed by Universal Audio between revisions. Each revision had different values between each of the push banks on the 1176. AudioScape has matched those changes to the letter, also even changing the half-watt carbon film resistors in the Rev F and all kinds of other teeny tiny details that actually do matter if you're trying to replicate each revision accurately. So just like the original units, each revision applies gain reduction and output gain a bit differently. You can especially see this in the Rev F, where the push-pull output stage gives you way more clean output gain. You'll notice I almost always have it dialed back quite a bit just to match the level of the other compressors. I did keep the attack and release controls mostly the same unless I was hearing a noticeable difference between them, in which case I was just trying to get the audio as closely as possible as I could. My friend Steve Stout and I did some videos for AudioScape's Instagram, and on those we matched the output gain in the box afterward, and we adjusted the input levels just using the send controls in Logic and Pro Tools. So, to the audio examples. In some cases, I've added the context of the mix in a few of these, especially on examples where I think the difference is more noticeable that way because, like I said, it's pretty subtle. And on that note, I would highly recommend you listen on a nice pair of headphones or some nice studio monitors. So anyway, it's going to go isolated track through Rev A, D, and F, then that same track in the same order with the mix going too. I basically just set up a series of send automations in Pro Tools and Logic depending on the session. We'll also have a bunch of stems with examples of each compressor on multiple sources so you can download and switch between the compressors at your leisure in your own DAW or just with the WAV files on your computer. And like I mentioned, you can head over to Instagram to check out me and Steve's cover of Don't Look Back in Anger by Oasis, where we switch the entire track between these compressors on each source and show examples between each source individually on each compressor. Last thing I'll say before we get to the audio, please let us know what differences you hear in the audio examples between these compressors. Drop your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to download the audio files for yourself and play around if you want more. Thanks, and I'll catch you in the next video.
I guess I'm just a little sentimental. I guess I get a little judgmental. I guess I'm just a little sentimental. I guess I get a little judgmental. I guess I'm just a little sentimental. I guess I get a little judgmental. I guess I'm just a little sentimental. I guess I get a little judgmental. I guess I'm just a little sentimental. I guess I get a little judgmental. I guess I'm just a little sentimental. I guess I get a little judgmental.
I'll be waiting, quietly praying, oh, 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 I'll be waiting, quietly praying, oh. I'll be waiting, quietly praying, oh, I'll be waiting, quietly praying, oh, I'll be waiting, quietly praying.